I'm remembering a time when I moved into a new home. It was literally the first day at the house, so all I had done at that point was spend a few hours bringing in some boxes from the U-Haul. I remember someone criticized me on the dirty state of the kitchen, and I was taken aback. How in the world could I, at that point in time, have had anything to do with how clean that kitchen was? I hadn't even used it yet, and that person knew that. I couldn't help but think that was a weird take on their part. And so, upon reflection, it got me wondering about how we feed our egos. Everyone has an ego, and the ego is not intrinsically a bad thing. It's just a part of you, just as much as your hands and your feet are. Also, we all need to keep our egos fed, but just like with food, not everything that we choose to feed our egos with is actually healthy and good for them. Junk food can be addictive, and likewise, the junk that we feed our egos can also be addictive too. But that can lead to an unhealthy ego, which in turn creates an unhealthy outlook on both ourselves and the world around us. That person at my house was willfully, albeit subconsciously, choosing to deny what was logically obvious in order to justify judging me in that moment. Perhaps they were doing that because, by judging me and my cleanliness, or lack thereof, they were in turn bolstering their own sense of self-worth, feeding their ego. Being judgmental or critical is just ego junk food. It feels good in the moment, but it isn't actually nourishing. It creates division, harms relationships, and is often, like in this case, irrational, or just a flat-out lie. So it reinforces a diluted sense of reality, contaminating our perspective of both ourselves and others. I'm reminded of the old saying, any jackass can kick a barn down, but it takes a skilled carpenter to raise one up. Now, other forms of ego junk food are self-pity and prejudice. But the thing is, there are healthy ways to feed your ego too. When you compliment others, you're actually feeding your own ego as well. Sometimes more than you're feeding theirs. It feels good. It's something that you can be proud of. You can also consider how, in a way, you're telling yourself that the people in your life are good people. That means that you value yourself enough to surround yourself with good people. So there's a lot going on there subconsciously. You're being a good person, and by being kind to other people, it makes you feel like you are a kind person. And that feeds your ego. And respecting the people in your life is also a form of self-respect. If that's a little confusing, then I invite you to think of it like this. If you treat your friends as if everything that they like is dumb or bad, and you're dismissive of all their interests, remember that they like you and are interested in spending time with you. Under that logic, what are you saying about yourself? But when you are kind and treat others with respect, or when you give to people and invest in them, you're doing something that, deep down, you know is good. Again, that makes you feel good about yourself, feeding your ego. So, that person who judged me for the state of my kitchen could have easily still fed their ego in that very moment, but in a completely different and healthy way. For example, instead of being critical, they could have thought, man, this guy just moved in, so he's got a lot on his plate. Right now, the kitchen isn't in a good state. He's going to have to give it a good clean before he can even really use it. Well, I like to clean things, and I also like to think that I'm pretty good at it too. Maybe that's something that I can help him with. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Hey man, mind if I clean your kitchen for you? See how this new thought process is still feeding that person's ego and helping them feel good about themselves, but this time, it isn't at someone else's expense. And it's not dishonest, it's not dismissive, it's not negative or toxic. That person gets to feel like they are a clean person as well as a kind person. And this time, it's actually by actively being and doing those things. They are genuinely being both clean and being kind in that very moment. No mental gymnastics required, and they didn't have to judge the other person to do it. I invite you to look for healthy new ways that you can use to feed your ego. If you find yourself judging someone because they might lack in an area that you don't, Ask yourself if there's a way that you can help them, and remind yourself of all the amazing qualities that person does have. Also, refuse to believe that the lack they have is a reflection of their character, but instead assume that it's probably, at least in no small part, due to outside circumstances. A lot of good things we have come from outside circumstances too. It can be easy to forget that. We like to take credit for everything that's good in our lives when that's just absolutely not true. When you bless others, you bless yourself even more. And we are not in competition with each other. Here's another one. Don't tell yourself that no one cares about you. That's a lie, I guarantee it. I mean, talk about the epitome of hyperbole. And as unintuitive as it may sound, that's actually just more ego junk food. Just this time, it's a little more indirect. You're basically telling yourself that you deserve to be treated better, aren't you? Try to practice thankfulness. Look for the positives and question your own negative assumptions. And if you truly are being undervalued or unloved, kindly address it with the other person, if appropriate, or if necessary, set a boundary with them and seek getting that psychological and emotional nourishment elsewhere. Have self-respect. That will feed your ego much better. So, some people feed their egos by working out. Some people feed their egos by mocking or judging people who work out. Some people feed their egos by working hard. Some people feed their egos by calling others tryhards. Some people feed their egos by lifting others up. Some people feed their egos by putting others down. Some people feed their egos by complaining about the world. And some people feed their egos by changing it. And there you go. I hope this helps, or at least gives you something to think about. Thank you so much for listening.